Okay, welcome everyone to the Leading Org AMA. I'm Liz with the Chief of Staff team, joined by Nick of Contributor Success and John of Developer Evangelism. We're excited to answer your questions today. As a reminder, this is being publicly streamed, so if you have internal questions related to, say, clients, please put it at the end and we'll switch over to private. First question is going to be with PJ. PJ, are you on the phone? Okay, I'll verbalize. BJ is asking, is there a plan in place to have employees contributing back to open source the way we're asking developers from other companies to do? You know, there was an issue at Rails contributions, and this would be in line with our stewardship of open source, be actively working on important projects. Nick, I think you put point A in. John, do you want to
Yeah, so there is indeed a related discussion, and I think John added in the handbook page on what we feel about that and what we think about that. So I'm happy to maybe have discussions about that. However, this is unrelated to the Leading Organizations initiative. So maybe this would be good to have it over Slack or somewhere else. I would advise us to focus on the initiative itself. This discussion is a broader discussion.
John, do you want to add in B?
Yeah, I think the explanation for how we think about contributing to open source is documented in the handbook. And so I'd encourage anyone with questions about that to check that out. And that issue that's linked there, I think what is being discussed is more about getting recognition as kind of consumers and of open source, and also for the contributions that we do make, because it's not that we don't make, any contributions. It's just that, I think the handbook instructs us to focus on contributing to GitLab for a number of reasons, including efficiency and results. So check that out if you want to take a look.
Great. And Yannick, I think you had number 2.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I'm sorry, I'm not really aware of what is the status of Leading Organization right now, but I had a chance to look at a few documents. I wanted to understand if you're looking for new customers to enter into this initiative, because basically I've got one of the major customers that I've got is a French telecommunication company, and they are really keen on open source and could lead me to be easier for me to sell our solution thanks to this initiative at the end of the day. While it's not the only reason for doing that, but obviously can help.
Absolutely. We are in line with our mission. Everyone can contribute. We're talking to customers and new customers. So I can sync up with you offline, but we want to encourage everyone to be part of this program and to help them scratch their own itch and contribute back to the product. So that's exciting.
Yeah, and maybe a very practical tip for that customer. Please advise them to put their organization in their profile. So that we can basically understand who is working for that company and where are those contributions coming from, or which organization are these contributions coming from. If the profile is anonymous, it's really hard to understand if they're actually collaborating together, or like where is this coming from.
And a follow-up question, what kind of people I'm going to chase? What type of profile are linked to those, discussions?
Yeah, maybe I'll take that first part. So what type of people are eligible, or at least like are the ones that we're looking for this program? That's what you're asking?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so ideally these are organizations that maybe have an itch that they'd like to scratch. Basically, they maybe have certain functionalities or bugs or other things that they're encountering in GitLab or in the broader perspective of the GitLab project. And that they have the will and they see the benefit of actually fixing that themselves. It's possible that it's not part of the roadmap of our product team. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't be accepted if the contribution comes in. So those types of people that have that willingness, that see that benefit of open source, that actually are willing to work with us, those will be the perfect candidates for this program.
Nick, to add to that, I think the persona that we're looking for, Yannick, is, the head of the engineering team or DevOps team or a business leader. and, the conversation is a little different for what they find valuable from this program. But we find that, they are looking to make kind of a big step change within their own organization to contribute back. And that's what we're trying to encourage.
If you take a look at the workshop deck, it's number 2 in the materials. You can see that there's a whole list of benefits listed, both from why would you need to do or contribute to open source, but also benefits coming from GitLab in order to assist you in that journey. If from a business decision maker point of view, there's a decision, we need to do this because we have to up our game from our company or organization. And then on the other side, from a technical direction, there's people that are also buying into that vision of saying, let's do this. That's the ideal situation.
Okay, that's
cool. Just to go back to the prior point, I wanted to point something out. Liz has done a great job building out a pipeline doc that I'm not sure is publicly available, but within that doc, there's kind of 3 key, what I would call elements to what we found in organizations that are, currently leading organizations. And that would be, a high health score, a high net promoter score, and a high product score. So if you have accounts that kind of check those 3 buckets, those could be good people to connect with in this kind of, first iteration of the rollout of this program.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, John. Tracy, you have 4.
Yes, I wasn't quite done typing, unfortunately. I'm actually sit on the governing board of Finos, which is part of the Linux Foundation. And I've been struggling to try to bring more value to our sponsorship and relationship there. One of the things that I think would be helpful is if we're able to contribute more there. And I realize there's a balance here, and I'm trying to figure out what that actual connection point is. We only have one project currently that is being hosted on GitLab, and GitHub is everywhere. So I think this is actually inherent to maybe some of the strategy we should be looking at from our GitLab versus GitHub strategy, right? What I'm thinking here is there some way that we could perhaps get more of their projects hosted on GitLab, but also so that some way that we can contribute and get our customers to contribute, because I think there's a lot of downstream benefit for us doing that as they learn, as they are doing more projects using GitLab. I'm hoping that's a sales incentive as well too, and then we can bring more salespeople into the conversation there. I'm not sure exactly how to do this from a technical perspective, and so that's why I want to bring this to this conversation here with this group of people to see if there's some way that we can increase our relationship and leverage the sponsorship that we have there. I'll leave it there, but I'm kind of hoping someone can help me to work through this.
Thanks, Tracy. I can take a crack at that one. So, I think the way that the community relations team at GitLab has been kind of structured, and the way that we have been focusing our efforts for the past few years has really been on kind of growing, supporting, and recognizing the wider GitLab community. Now, at times we do, partner and collaborate with other external communities to kind of make progress towards that goal of growing the GitLab community. But we really haven't had, a large scale effort to kind of push investment in, essentially contributing to external projects. This goes back a bit to that first kind of handbook link that I shared in response to the first question, and how GitLab thinks about, open source stewardship. So that's kind of where we've been focused now. As the company grows, we may, you can see from that issue and from some of the questions that we're receiving today that there seems to be, kind of a growing interest in how GitLab can be a better kind of citizen in maybe other open source communities that we're part of. And so that's something that we can think about as a community relations team, but it's not something that we've been really structured to do up to this point.
Thank you, John. I've been working with Leaf House on this as well too. And I think we're starting to try to congeal some sort of thought towards how we could do this. But I would like to have ongoing conversations and also get people involved if there's willingness to do that.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
Brian, I saw that you added a comment from the chat. Do you want to verbalize that?
Oh, I just meant it as an offhanded
Okay.
comment to PJ, but I appreciated his question that about our contributions, and I think in my mind, a way to frame it might be to say, for what organizations or projects is GitLab a leading organization according to our own criteria, right? If we were to describe ourselves using the criteria of the deck, but in the context of other projects that are upstream from us or that are part of our dependencies, for whom would we be a leading organization? I think would be a nice challenge for us to take on going forward, so we can practice what we're asking our own customers and contributors to do for us and with us.
Absolutely. I think that's something we should incorporate into this.
Yeah, I think the answer is we're a leading organization for GitLab. I think we have more than 20 MRs to GitLab. And I think a very significant portion of that is to the open source code base. I think actually the license matters less. And I think if you look at our development practices, they're very close to those of a lot of open source projects. So I think why we're inviting companies to participate is because open source projects are run in a way that has very kind of efficient, it's a very efficient way of writing software. And we do that. We almost think that's natural. But for a lot of companies, that's not, and there's a lot for them to gain from that.
We should try and take that one a step further. I love this line of thinking, Brian. And I've seen one-off, two-off contributions from team members to open source projects, some of which we use. I don't know offhand or if we are a customer of other open core companies. I don't know if anyone else on the call does, but I'm curious. We've set the bar for the leading organizations activation at 20 contributions in a 3-month period. I don't know that we've hit that ourselves with any other either open source projects that we leverage outside of GitLab, to Sid's point, or products that we buy as GitLab that might offer an open source component.
PJ raised Rails as one example, but there are many other, I'm sure, open source projects on which we depend, to say nothing of open core vendors on which we depend. But we certainly depend on an entire value stream that we derive from open source, and we are who we are today because of that value stream. So it might be a nice example for our own marketing materials to discuss how we pay it forward, and the value that we generate, not just in an altruistic way, but the value that we generate by contributing to our value stream, to our suppliers.
One example I wanted to bring here is the other side of the value stream. For example, Gitaly is now also being used by other companies like Hugging Face, and maybe I'll share the link in the doc. Sorry, Christina, for going in between. This is a way to go on the other side of the value stream. So we are basically collaborating with another company on a project that started at GitLab that is still very much maintained by GitLab. And seeing how we can collaborate there. So I would maybe suggest we should look both fronts at the beginning of the value stream, but also at the end.
Yannick, you have number 6. Do you want to verbalize that?
Yeah, sorry, it's a follow-up from last question. Is there any constraints on the type of customer that we are looking for? For instance, the customer I was mentioning is core user mainly. So wonder if it's okay to put that in.
No, absolutely, it's okay. I've been talking to a lot of our core users. I think where the differentiation is that the core team is kind of focused on the individual contributor, and what Leading Orgs is focused on is the broader organization. So, having people like core team members at organizations, teach other people at their organizations how to contribute back to GitLab allows for that kind of consistent contributing to happen month over month, which is what we're after.
I think,
Okay.
I'm not sure, Yannick, if by GitLab Core you meant GitLab free.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So Liz, we used to call the free tier core. So that might be why you were thinking of the core team and not the free tier. But yes, the free tier is definitely part of this kind of pipeline. And some of the existing leading organizations are GitLab free users.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you all for the great questions and conversation. Lots of things to think about and incorporate into our program. We've recently launched as a working group, so we're bringing more folks on board to scale the program. And our goal next year is to hit 100 onboarded leading orgs. So we're excited about the progress. If you have more questions, feel free to come to our Slack channel or any of our weekly meetings, and look forward to contributing to our success.
Liz, sorry to
all.
stomp on your great close there. I do have one question that I wanted to pass on from
Sure.
the CS team. So I pitched this AMA. The CS team's in an all hands right now, so that's why we don't see a lot of attendees. And one of the questions that I got that I couldn't answer was, how do we arrive at the activation number of 20 MRs in a 3-month period? I didn't know that offhand.
Nick, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I don't remember like factually, but it's in the meeting notes, and it's I think from the assumption that we want someone that is not that is like half time occupied with contributing to GitLab. So basically half of what we expect from the Merchant rates of a full-time engineer at GitLab itself. However, it can be spread out across the organization. So if it's 3 people or 4 people getting to that same cadence, that's basically how we got to that number. I think if you want to see the exact discussion, it's in the meeting notes that are linked at the top.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.
Don and Liz, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that's how we ended up there.
No, that's right.
Cool. Thanks. And sorry again, Liz, for opening
No
it back
problem.
up after that great close.
No problem.